Welcome to EnTrench, a 21 Pilots podcast. Hello, local dreamers. Welcome to EnTrench. My name is Annah, and this is episode 82, the Hype music video. Make sure you've watched the video beforehand and are ready for an in-depth analysis. Today, I have Nugget on my lap, and she was staring at me. And also, she has for maybe a year now worn a yellow plaid collar, and I feel that that's very timely today. So good job, Nugget. I hope you guys are enjoying your November. Mine is winding down, which I'm very, very grateful for. I feel like I get to spend the rest of the year really celebrating how much God has taught me this year, how much He has sowed contentment and peace more than anything. And those are huge deals. So I'm very grateful to be able to rest well the next month and a half and recuperate from the chaos that is the world in the shelter of His wing. So yes, today we are looking at the Hype music video, and I feel like this is one I'm less familiar with. I wasn't sure how much there would be to talk about, but like usual, we can usually glean a good amount. And I really like how this video is a testimony. And of course, the first thing I thought of, which was the funny comment that I liked under the video, is that I immediately thought of Tyler as a Teletubby. So grateful I was not the only one. That was immediately my first reaction, of course. So, brief background to the video. It was released on July 26th, 2019, and it has over 83 million views on YouTube, which is pretty dang good, like they all are. So, we start with the Teletubby moment, but also the callback to Screen, where Tyler opens a store on his chest to then show the rest of the video. And I think this is where I got the testimony concept from, because he's kind of like, okay, here's some vulnerability here. I'm standing in front of you. I'm trying to be so cool. But God, like, here's the truth. This is what we're getting into with this video. And it reminds me of my own testimony and how it's not just a coming to Jesus moment, but your life is full of many different kinds of spiritual testimonies. And so this feels like specifically their music testimony that Josh and Tyler have journeyed through, and the story that God has told through the music sphere of their life. So I was just very cognizant of that throughout watching the duration of this video. And as we quickly see, the theme here is plaid, like I alluded to with Nugget's collar. What is plaid? It is a lot of things. It's especially a staple for laborers, the working class, if you will. You know, you think of like lumberjacks and cowboys, and you know, we're out here doing work in nature. And so in a way, I feel like this was kind of choice to equalize themselves with the humans around them, instead of making themselves larger than life. And then also, clothing itself can be used for warmth, for durability, and also to hide dirt. And I feel like this almost exactly reminds me of the concept of a jumpsuit and how the Spirit and God is covering. It's washing us clean. It's, you know, providing fruits of the Spirit, providing discernment, giving us that warmth, that direction that we need. And of course, it's the most durable thing ever, more durable than our earthly lives. So I feel like there's a lot spiritually, and there's also a lot in terms of really wanting to both explain the testimony here, but also make it applicable to everyone, instead of making it seem like they're somehow set apart from other people in the story that they've had. Like, certainly not everyone can relate to the sheer volume of humans who know them, but that's not to say that they don't still have any sort of average testimony that God cultivates in our lives, because ultimately the result is the same. The result is the product that it does in our hearts. And I think the very end of the video wraps up that sentiment very well. And then I just noted, as we get into the video itself, there's the muffled music from outside the house that then turns into the live in-person music that's not muffled. And this idea that they don't want us to just watch this testimony, to watch what's happening, but to genuinely join in, to experience what it would be like to be in their shoes, to empathize, once more, one of my favorite things in the world, with a type of lifestyle, a type of person that I am not in this lifetime, but that I can understand better by residing within this video and beyond, to infinity and beyond. Okay, so then we get into verse 1, and this is like almost exactly the scene out of Stressed Out, where, you know, immediately when Tyler was on the road at the beginning, when he opened his chest, I was like, this feels like this is probably where his parents lived. This feels very similar vibes to Stressed Out. And then we get into the house, and I feel like they're in virtually the same living room space. They like position themselves exactly the same. Deja vu moment. But also it starts off with their literal journey musically, where it's just Tyler and Josh playing and practicing, and they're alone at home. And I feel like they're it's funny to see them in this scene, because I feel like they're intentionally acting very stiff as performers, even though that's not who they are anymore. But this idea of when you're first starting something, you're very fresh, very unsure of your abilities. And also, I just noted, because we have this moment where the camera's moving with Tyler while he's singing, I kind of felt this was a choice to emphasize the self-consciousness, to feel like I'm being very intimately scrutinized. My every movement is being watched, and I am just still trying to figure out how to show up and what that means, and how to relate within this craft that God has put on my heart, but that is very foreign to me still. And so I thought this was a very good moment of novelty and humility in discomfort. You can't get anywhere without being uncomfortable first, and also just needing to start at the basics, needing to, you know, kind of do more of the monotonous, repetitive work of practice, of learning chords, of all of these things that, like, we'd rather be maybe doing more of the flashy things, but like there's no way to get there without first being without people around and just being awkward and working through that, and not being afraid to work through that as well. So then we get into the chorus, and we pan out. The scene changes a bit, whereas now it's not just Tyler and Josh, but it is more of an actual performance where there are people around listening. It's a very casual performance, and I'm assuming it's just representative of loved ones, family, friends in this house. But we see even just a little bit that Tyler and Josh are already starting to loosen up and be more comfortable, both with each other, bouncing off of each other with their energy, but also not being afraid to move around a little bit, even in spite of knowing that there are people there who are listening and aware of what they're doing. Because really, even though there's people there, no one really cares that much, or at least is not attentively watching them in the same way as fans do. And so I just noted that as we get into verse 2 then, Tyler sings, "Your exterior world can step off instead," and this is when he unplugs his bass and leaves the room. But I just wanted to pause here and really zoom in here in this moment, because I feel like it's maybe the most pivotal moment, or one of the most pivotal moments in this testimony and in art in general, because there's this feeling of like possibly being rejected, in the sense that I hear very faint laughter happening, which could be totally unrelated and just coincidental, but it almost feels like you give in to the insecurity, and like that's what pushed Tyler away and into a different room. I feel like this is the moment where it's like, it's not that no one cares, but when almost only the people you already know and love are intaking what you're doing or following your journey, it can sometimes be even more insecurity ridden than no one, because it's like, well, of course you're around, and not that it doesn't matter, because it absolutely does. Our loved ones are fantastic, but it can really bring up this question of like, is what I'm doing, not that it's not valuable, but like, does it matter to people who don't know me? Or are people just, maybe pitying me? Maybe pitying's not the right word, but you know what I mean? It's like that, yeah, mom, of course you love it, but that's because you're my mom. I think, you know what I mean? I'm just having a hard time coming up with eloquent words right now. But yeah, I feel like I've felt this a lot in basically every hobby art form that I've partaken in ever, including my podcast. And this is probably where I'm at with my videos right now, because they're a lot more new, but I like really care about them and I really love doing it. Similar to my podcast, but the audience isn't there. It's very minimal. And so it's hard not to overthink like, oh, is no one around because it doesn't matter? Is no one around because it doesn't have an audience? Is this just like my loved ones are just humoring me, but no one else really cares? And so to me, this is like where my exterior world, my insecurities would get the better of me. And I feel like I would also like assume the worst and be like, you know what, I'm just gonna unplug. And not that causes him to stop. He's obviously keeps moving, and so it's not maybe a direct analogy here, but maybe I just wanted to emphasize that there is this really important moment where you have to have faith in what you're doing, even if you don't see other people bolstering it. And really, in a way, the only reason anything keeps going in this very uncomfortable moment that can last a huge variety, like a huge range of time. There's no one size fits all in terms of how long each of these stages lasts, but this to me is absolutely the most uncomfortable moment in this entire journey of creativity, of unconventionality, of anything that requires you putting yourself out there in who you are, what you're interested in, saying something creatively. There's just this type of faith that other types of work don't require, because no one's telling you to do it. You're deciding it's important and you're going to. And you have to trust that, like, just like faith in God, something could be worth it, not because you see anything now, but you have belief that you could see people valuing it in the future. And to me, like, that's what keeps me enjoying the art that I'm creating, and it's also what keeps me inspired to keep creating it, because I feel like I would love to intake anything that I've ever created. That is a huge reason behind why I do what I do. If I don't think it's enjoyable, I think it shows. And I feel like there's times where I've done things out of like feeling like I have to, and it shows. But there's just a very particular energy when you know that you're genuinely just enjoying what you're doing, first of all. So I really enjoy that. But yeah, I think there's so much to say about faith in art. Like, they're kind of one and the same, because they require the same amount of belief in something that's not necessarily tangible. I feel like there's other things I wanted to say, but I'm blanking. But anyway, just want to encourage you, like, if you are in this stage, resonate with this stage at all, you're just like, I don't know, and not even that it's going poorly, but just like, but does it matter? I would say if God's put it on your heart to have any passion and zeal for it, it matters. Even if it's only for the sake of one singular person. And I feel like Tyler's talked about it similarly like that. Like, even if the thing only matters to one person, you make it for that person. Even if it only matters because you're just obeying the things that God puts on your heart, that matters, you know? Because at the end of the day, do you see someone skilled in her work? She will stand before kings. She will not stand before obscure men. Work as if you are working for the Lord, because you are. But yeah, I just want to encourage you, like, it's also so easy to falter and doubt and have insecurity and on and on and on when you're doing creativity, because you don't have the assurance that you have when you're getting money for something. Like, you're literally being bribed to do something that you don't want to do, versus like, oh my gosh, I really want to do this thing, and I am, but what if no one cares? Like, that's a lot scarier. Like, I might not care about what I'm doing that I get paid for, but I am getting something for it. I'm not necessarily going to get anything for the creativity other than knowing that I worked through a process of faith. But is that not worth it? Is that not the entire point of everything ever? Why we exist? If not for conveying faith. And in that way, the artist's way is a way that I will always live out, even when I don't like it, because I wish that I could see everything. I wish that it didn't require faith, because faith's really uncomfortable. So anyway, to finally emphasize this entire discomfort, I wanted to bring up Peter and Jesus, because I think of this all the time with creativity, and I've probably brought it up before. Matthew 14:22 through 33. Immediately, he made the disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side while he dismissed the crowds, he being Jesus. And after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone, but the boat by this time was a long way from the land, beaten by the waves, for the wind was against them. And in the fourth watch of the night, he came to them, walking on the sea. But when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified and said, "It is a ghost," and they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, "Take heart, it is I, do not be afraid." And Peter answered him, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." He said, "Come." So Peter got out of the boat and walked on the water and came to Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." Jesus immediately reached out his hand and took hold of him, saying to him, "O you of little faith, why did you doubt?" And when they got into the boat, the wind ceased, and those in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly you are the Son of God." This is like our entire tension with all of our testimonies in life, where God is calling us to something, and we're like, okay, can you just like verify? And then he does. And even though we said that was all we needed, we're like, okay, well, even though you verified that, I'm terrified. Great. Well, actually now I'm just like scared. It's like we want the clarity, and then God gives us the clarity, but then we don't like the clarity, because we somehow want God's clarity to like fit into this cookie cutter, this very specific cookie cutter we have decided it needs to be, which it's obviously not going to be. And then we're like shocked when it's not. But like, why are we shocked when it's not? Peter asks him, let him know. So he does. And so he goes, okay, I'm going to do it because you said to. And he attempts. But when there are other factors beyond his control, it's suddenly scary, because you can't control how people are going to react. You can't control if some people laugh at you, if some people think you being authentically you and leaning into whatever that means is weird or uncool, or why are you talking about Jesus all the time? That can apply to literally anything that we do. Jesus is almost never culturally considered cool. Like, it is very like, ooh, cringe. No one wants to be associated with Jesus. I feel like the wind that also cultivates fear can be lies from the enemy, either through people or just internally speaking directly to you in your mind, etc., etc. I get scared by numbers. I get scared by algorithms. I get scared by the internet, other people's opinions. Hello, recovering people pleaser. Basically anything about other people, because I cannot control other people, can sometimes freak me out. Mostly in terms of presenting myself to the world, which is what I do creatively, either verbally or visually, because inevitably I know, based on everything else that I've ever consumed by other artists, is it inevitably will get judged. There's literally no way around it. There is no way around it. And I think for a long time I put off creating because I was like, I'm going to find a way to somehow avoid judgment. That's literally impossible and silly. And I'm so glad I'm not afraid of that anymore, because I don't want to be for everyone, and Jesus is not for everyone. But I think where me and Tyler agree a lot, and where we continue to see his testimony evolve with Josh, is that we don't want it to be about numbers. We want it to be about finding the people that want to be there and the people who believe it's for them. And that's, even when I'm in this discomfort of like, oh, I don't like where I'm at right now creatively, because I wish I was in a different spot. But I have to constantly remind myself, I am not doing this in the way that hustle culture wants me to. I'm actually refusing to do most things that are deemed successful creatively, because I want it to remain fun, and I want it to remain centered on God, not on me, and I want it to be for the people who want it. I don't want it to be for just anyone. I don't want to have a formula. I don't want to have any certain statistics. I just want the people it's supposed to be for to find it. But I also don't want to make it my world so that it sucks the joy out of why I even started anything to begin with. I think the biggest thing I've learned this year that has given me a lot of freedom in Christ is, after having a perspective of adulthood for closer to a decade now, I've just realized it's not worth my mental health. Work, art, relationships, etc., 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 are not worth my mental health. And I feel like that could be taken inaccurately with what I mean. What I mean is, I have been in the depths of depression a lot based on what I do or don't do. And so I don't want anything to have that power again, because it did for a long time. And so, in part of the reason that things I did brought me so mentally low, or relationships hurt me, traumatized me severely, etc., they all have the common denominator of I was denying who God made me to be. Either I was denying the professional desires he put in my heart, and so I was miserable, or I was denying the boundaries that I needed, so I was miserable with people, or I was denying having opinions, so I was also miserable. And ultimately, a lot of things have changed in life, but the biggest thing that changed everything, was I've allowed myself all of the space I need to exist the way God made me, and it's great. I will never go back. I was doing everyone a disservice by pretending like I didn't have to exist. Anyway, I feel like I've gotten on some really weird, long rabbit hole at this point, but just to round all of these thoughts on this stage of faith and the testimony and journey and everything, just wanted to end it with, I feel like the culmination of my testimony when I think of this testimony is that God has allowed me to finally see the fullness in Him that is contingent on nothing else earthly. No person, no situation, etc. And because of that, I have more clearly seen who I am because of His character, and because of that, I know what I'm worth, and I know what is not worth giving pearls to. And before, I used to just give pearls to everything and everyone, and now I'm selective. So we've unplugged. We hit a little sidebar there, but now we're focusing again in the garage this time. And we have a larger crowd. There's a crowd here of people who are all attentive and actively listening to the music and discerning the music and the lyrics. And it's much more intimate, it's much more focused, and there's cozy lighting, but it's also crowded and there's kind of not enough room for everyone as well, so they have to expand some more. And that obviously means professionally just continuing to expand the band with their following, that God just continually provided them. But also I noted that it's cool to see that there's more plaid when they get in here. There's more equipment and there's more determination and focus. This idea of once you work through the insecurities, there's a lot more confidence in, okay, let's just keep leaning in even heavier into the things that are us and that are working and that make us who we are, not anyone else. And really, ultimately is the epitome of trusting God's design of you and that you were made on purpose and you're not a mistake and the world does need you specifically. And if you're an artist, that means your art specifically. So I really like how the confidence is gained here. And then, of course, we hit quote unquote the top, but is it really? Where Tyler then moves up the ladder onto the roof with Josh, and they've fully embraced the plaid. There's so many layers of plaid going on whilst on the roof. And I feel like at this point, they're not just playing or having a lot of energy, but they're properly performing, putting on a performance, not just playing songs at this point. Especially as musicians, like, there's definitely a difference between people who just like playing music and people who also love performing for people. And I think 21 Pilots is a perfect example of artists who genuinely just take joy in performing for people, giving people a performance. So I really loved watching that in how their demeanor changed onto the roof here. And of course, there's the largest group of people there has been. God has brought so many people who are all super excited and big fans. They can sing along. They know all the different beats to the song. And of course, we've all taken part in that. But also just this affirmation of people are excited just because you're being who you are. And I think that is one of the coolest outcomes of leaning into art. And even if you're not an artist, there's so many ways where people can just affirm exactly who we are and that it is valued. And that's one of the coolest moments of having people who love your art say something, is really a product of that faith that you spent years cultivating, that God is now reassuring you was worth it. A lot of times, literally through people who found your art. So that's just always so rewarding, because people are really mouthpieces for God in those moments. And yes, this is where the spiritual warfare and the faith analogy with success comes in, because as he's saying, I can hear my way around, he's met with the attacks and the explosions either on the roof or towards the roof. I don't exactly know what direction they're coming from, but in any case, I feel like this is where either the enemy is let in to attack, or God is specifically testing faith in him? Do you have faith that God is enough? Do you have faith that even if everything else goes away and there was only God left, that is all that you've ever needed? And so I did just want to sidebar that it's not always just the enemy, but sometimes God wants to test our faith. And I think that was a cool visual reminder of that. So as the chorus comes back around, Tyler falls through a hole in the roof back to the garage floor. I just noted that he lost numbers here. You know, they never go back up to the roof, similar to Blurry Face era, I'm sure. However, that doesn't change their energy. They keep the momentum, they keep the performance, they keep the confidence. And again, I think this shows that they are really thriving with their people, their target audience, versus numbers. And what matters to them most is faith, is stepping into faith, living out faith, rather than trying to control, trying to manipulate, trying to upkeep a number, awards, etc., that the industry tells you is supposed to be how you garner success. When they say you'll be just fine, Tyler has this hand motion across his face, and I just noted that it kind of feels like removing a mask. So again, back to this idea of screen and testimony parallels. There's no need to hide who you are. You can just be authentic, and God will remember who you are, period. And I also just emphasized how through this testing of faith, they prove that they have faith without sight. They literally close their eyes. There's the T shape they both do, whilst the explosions are, everything is repairing itself at this point. And I think they're kind of just exemplifying surrender in this moment, that God will rebuild, he will provide, and he already is repairing and giving faith and hope and providing the next steps already. They also take off some of the layers of their outfits, and I just emphasized how this is, again, being yourself. There's no need to overcompensate. There's no need to perform in terms of earning anything. You can just strip down to the bare minimum with whatever works for you, and that can be enough for the right people, for the people God has for you. You'll lose some of the more shallow people, but did you really want them? Are those really the people God had for you anyway? So just wanted to emphasize, because I always love to emphasize this as well. You don't need anything fancy for success, for creating art. You just need the basics. And again, I have done that every single time with anything creative, the bare minimum technology that I need to do it, because ultimately I'm doing it because it's a joy, because it's fun, because God has wired me this way. So it can be easy to get caught up in all of the how-tos, especially because the internet is like wired towards telling you what to do about absolutely everything now. But don't believe the hype. That's the whole point. And I also noted as they go back into the original living room, etc., there are yellow flowers. Not just that, I feel like there's a huge yellow presence in this video again, which emphasizes how much I love God as related to the color yellow, and how much I see him in the ways that they use yellow throughout these narratives. There was like virtually no yellow in the beginning, and then they slowly put on like yellow plaid, and the drum kit had yellow, and I love how it just builds and builds and builds. So this idea of God being yellow, he's more present the more faith there is, the less insecurity there is. He's flourishing, he's blessing, he is present, and I just saw that a lot through the yellow. There's yellow flowers in the picture frames, reminder of the race of endurance, just like jumpsuit. But then also Tyler wraps yellow tape on his mic stand, and the yellow trench logo appears on Josh's drum set. And then, of course, at the end, Tyler tapes the picture back up on the wall with yellow tape. And, God, is that adhesive that holds everything together. And I I love seeing that the more they step into themselves and the more confidence they gain and the more faith that they step into, God is pleased. And I like seeing the belief that God is pleased through yellow flourishing. So at the end, we back out of the testimony story, and Tyler and Josh get some ice cream, walk down the road, and Josh even hits Tyler at the end. And I just wanted to note that ultimately this story is about how nothing changed. A lot of people look at the externals because man looks on the outward appearance, and it's easy to think, oh, so many things changed, but ultimately nothing externally changed. It's still Tyler, it's still Josh. They still end up on the same streets at the end of the day. They still live in the same place at the end of the day with their same families. They still deal with potholes. They still have the same roads and home where they filmed stressed out. They're still teasing. They're still not above getting hit and teased by the other person. But ultimately what did change is their heart and their mindset, and that is ultimately God's story for all of us. We are all the same, and that God is not one to focus on changing our external circumstances, but he is one to time and time again change the way that we view ourselves and the way that we view him and the way that we view humanity and the world around us. God is always up to something. It's just almost always inside of us. And I think that's the biggest marker of the journey. They didn't gain success because of numbers. They didn't gain success because of products, but instead they gained success through belief in God's character, belief that their identity has nothing to do with any of the things that the world tries to shove down our throat as where our identity lies. So I hope that this can be a liberating moment where we find identity beyond what hustle culture desperately tries to make our identity. You know, the world is built around what are you going to do when you retire and what are you doing with your money and all of these assumptions of where your identity is. And as soon as you make it spiritual, the world just has no idea how to even react to the idea that maybe your identity has nothing to do with any of those things. Maybe it has everything to do with something you can't even see. I want to hear from you. You can email EnTrenchPodcast@gmail.com with a written account of your 21 Pilots story or your favorite memories you have related to the band. You can also reach out with an episode request if you want to analyze a song, video, or album with me. And if you'd like to contribute to the analysis we've already covered, you can send an email or message me on Instagram at EnTrench_pod. You can find EnTrench on Podbean, Verbal, Spotify, Apple Music, and Amazon Music. I look forward to hearing from you. Tune in next time for Nico and the Niners. Thank you so much for listening, friends. Stay alive and remember, EnTrench, you're not alone.